Alright, so I have my sheets of the river rock here laid out. There's 6 sheets here. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut a 7-inch wide swath of this stuff, and it's going to run straight up the middle of the shower where the shower head is and the plumbing and the tub spout and all that. And so we're going to cut a vertical straight line on this side and a vertical straight line on this side so that these will just fit right into the wall with the regular straight tile on either side of them. So what I had to do is I fitted all these together first to make sure that they're in the proper orientation so that when I cut my 7-inch swaths, it'll go continuously all the way up the wall. So you can see how they fit together here, the sheets, the way they're engineered. So they just kind of fit in pretty nice. And here we are 15 minutes later. I finally got the 7-inch wide river rocks cut there. So it looks so much better when you have it trimmed to perfectly match the tiles that are going to go on either side. And then right around there is where we're going to put the shower. We'll have to remove some of the rocks there, but looks perfect. I can't wait to get this up on the wall. Now as we keep working the area around the niche here, I went ahead and decided, well, we want to put the accent banner border right along here. I figured this would be a great spot to do it, right below the windowsill. It's a great breaking point. And it'll still come up sufficiently high enough on the arch niche, although normally we prefer to do it about 50%, about halfway to make it look symmetrical. But, you can't always do that. So this is pretty close. You're at about 1/3. And so you can see we had to cut this piece here to accommodate. And so we're just going to have the banner come around here. It'll stop there. It'll pick up on the other side of the niche here, and it'll go right to here, and it'll stop right here at the corner piece. So we'll take a step back here a minute and just look here at all of these dry fitted pieces here up top. What I like to do whenever here you have the length of a tile, about 22 inches or so. Whenever I break that length up like this and put a little banner in there, I always like the next piece on top, the aggregate of all 3 of these pieces here, to equal the length of one whole tile, like this one down here. So I'd like to take that length, bring it up here, and make it equal to those. So we'll be cutting a shorter piece to go on top here, and that will bring everything back in line with what we've done over here, because these were full pieces here. So everything will come back in line, and it'll match this line that you see right here. And then we'll be starting again with a new row of tiles going up there. And I just wanted to point something out here to you also. This is why you can't rely on your tub to be level. You can't use that surface as a reference point for you. Because look at this, look what the builder did here. This tub is, as you can see, is far from level. So that's another reason why I mentioned earlier that we put spacers under our tiles to adjust the heights a little bit to give us a little margin for error. But in this case here, these have the same spacers that these do, and the top of the tile there, as you can see against the line on the Curdy panel there, is lower than the one on the right. See how the one on the right goes a little bit above that line, and the one on the left goes a little below that line. So when I go to set these tiles, I'm going to have to switch to a different spacer because I'm pretty much getting out of height here. It may or may not work if I jack it up a little more, but I have other spacer sizes that I use. And because the tub is so far out of level there, this tile has to come up a little bit, about another 1/8 of an inch. So these are other little considerations that you need to think about when you're doing tiling. And thank God it went downhill, because if it went uphill, wow, we'd probably be having to cut the bottom off the tile. Well, there you have it, all of the travertine pencil tile pieces are now framed around the outside of the niche here, so you can see the real tricky part was getting all of the grout lines to even out. So that's where we used all of these blue wedges here. But in the end, it was worth it. You're looking at about 5 hours worth of work right there, just on this niche alone, from the time we started tiling it. All right, so you can see here we have these accent tiles here, and so we left a space here for them when we were putting these up, just because of time constraints and logistics. We had to make sure we were moving along on this wall and getting these tiles up. So we put wood blocks here to allow these accent pieces to fit with an 1/8 inch above and an 1/8 inch below for the grout lines to separate them from the field tiles. And so we're going to insert some of those in here today. All right, so we have this river rock here, okay? And this is, these stones are going to be placed up here. We cut them earlier. And so what we had to do was we had to stitch them up in order to fit around the tub spout. So you can see they're going to just fit nicely right in here. And these are such a pain to deal with, so you have to blue tape the top side of them. And we'll see if that's enough to keep them rigid enough. So our plan with these is to, with our putty knife, we're going to just skim coat right in here, about 1/8 of an inch or so, and then do a skim coat right here in the back of this mesh. And then we'll hang it on the wall like this, and we're just going to embed it slightly in there. And then we're going to take a wood block, and this wood block here will go across the tiles, and it'll make sure that these sheets of stone here are perfectly flush. We're not going to push them in with our hand. And then we'll wait about a half hour or so until it sets up a little bit, so we know it's not going to move. And we'll gently peel the tape back and make sure the stones are exactly where we want them to be. Because some of these, we had to stitch them in one by one to go around here. So I have a little strip that's going here and a little strip that's going there. And we have another sheet over here. The sheet here, with these two strips here, is going to form the circle here that goes around this shower valve here. Once we get these two done, it'll be pretty easy. I have my other sheets already pre-cut on left and right, perfect edges to line up to here, and we'll shoot those all the way up the wall there. All right, so here we are with these stones here that are on the wire, on the mesh, and I've already put a thin skim coat here onto the wall. And you don't want to do too much, because it's all going to come oozing through here anyway. So what you want to do here is we're just going to back butter this one here a little bit, just a very thin amount, because the combination of this 1/8 inch or so that I'm putting on the back of here with about an 1/8 inch on the wall there is going to equal almost a 1/4 of an inch. So this way here, we're assuring that we're going to get some pretty good coverage here. Now I'm hoping that since we put the blue tape on the front side, that it'll keep these things here intact, and that it won't slide down the wall or kind of fold on itself. Sometimes the blue tape isn't really effective enough, it's not stiff enough. So we'll have to see what it does here. And if that's the case, then we'll end up having to put this onto some Kerdi membrane first, and then putting Kerdi membrane on to the wall. Sort of an intermediary step, but I'm hoping this will go pretty good. So I'm just kind of making sure I got a nice even amount here. I'm trying not to put too much in there, just enough to make us 100% contact. And by the way, when you're back buttering tiles, don't be fooled into thinking, oh, I've got 100% coverage just because you've back buttered the whole back of your tile. You don't get 100% coverage unless you have 100% coverage, unless everything here is touching everything there. That's the way coverage works. So when you comb down your big tiles and you got those trowel lines, those parallel trowel lines, if those lines don't collapse down, you're not going to get any contact. The only part that will be contacting is just the top part of those lines there. All right, so I've got I think is a good workable amount here on here. Let me just add a little bit more to these guys. And then you can see what I've done down here at the bottom. The Curdy panel board actually ends right there. So there's about a 1/2 inch gap or so. So what I've done is I've actually filled that in with Thinset mortar just to make sure that the rocks at the bottom have some kind of support behind them, because kids are going to be throwing toys and who knows what's going to be happening in this bathtub later on. And you want to have support behind this. You don't want any loose part of the tiles hanging down. And that's why you really can't see it from the camera angle, but there's a little bit of a gap right there that I'm going to fill in right now, which is on the big tile, just to make sure that that big tile has adequate coverage behind it. So I'm going to put them in there and fill in that gap. And now we're ready to try our luck in this piece. Just very gently lift it, let it hang. You don't want to bend it, twist it or anything, just let it hang. And push it into the mortar. So far it's holding. So what we want to do then is use our wood board here. Just push them in. And now he's nice and flat in there. And so what we're going to do is, once this sets up, we'll give it about a 1/2 hour or so to kind of firm up a little more. And then we'll come in and we'll peel off the tape. Let me just see if I can gently even pull a little of the tape off now. Yeah, see, it'll tend to pull some of these rocks with it. See? So you have to wait a little while. So once that happens, I don't feel comfortable leaving the tape on overnight like some people do, because you don't know what happened to the rocks in there, and you don't want to come in tomorrow and find out that one is sticking out at an angle at you. So you want to wait till it sets up, peel the tape off, find the ones that need to be adjusted, and go ahead and adjust them. Alright, so now that we're done with the installation of all the tiles, this is natural stone here, these rocks, and so are these pencil pieces here. So what we're going to do is we're going to put on a sealer and enhancer. Now there's two types of this sealer that you can get. There's one like this one that has the enhancer built into it, and then there's another type that doesn't have an enhancement. So this sealer will kind of add like a little bit of contrast to it. And if you don't want that type of effect to it, then you can just get the regular sealer and it will leave it looking exactly like this. It'll kind of blend. I like to give it a little punch, a little kick to it. So I've already got some here in a cup here, and all I do is very simple. Use my paintbrush here. I just brush it across. Try to let it get in the middle there too, on the sides, the edges of the stone. What this sealer does, because this is natural stone, it's very porous. And when you go to grout, if you were to just grout right on these, you could possibly stain these, and this might even absorb the grout, and you wouldn't be able to get all of it like off the front. And sometimes it seeps into the edges, and it just colors your natural stone. So this just keeps it looking like natural stone without it being absorbing. And you can see right now it's getting a little bit contrasty. So you can see how these here on the right hand side have a little bit more saturation to the color, a little more contrast to it. So that's what that effect does. And then down here on the pencil, I don't want to get any on the other tiles because those are ceramic, they don't need to get sealed. But you just kind of drag it gently across. And you can see almost right away how the effect of the enhancing part. See how these grain patterns here are really starting to become prominent. And that's all you do, and you got to wait 2 to 3 days before you can grout. That's working with stone takes a long time because it adds a lot of days to your calendar for all of the extra steps and stuff that you have to do. but you do have to do it. If you try to take a shortcut, you're going to end up with a failed installation. Alright, so now I'm going to seal this travertine sill that we installed also. Now this is pretty shiny up top, so it's pretty well honed, but I don't know if it's still porous or not, so I am going to go ahead and seal it. I know the front feels kind of rough, so he's definitely going to get it on the front here. So just brush it right on, and you leave it on for about a half hour, and then if there's any excess there, you just wipe it off. Yeah, you know, I can see it enhancing it a little bit, so I'm willing to bet that this is still porous underneath that pretty smooth and shiny honing that they did. Just going to grab the front of it here. Now watch, you can see how quickly the enhancement process works. Let's see if it brings up any of the grain on the front here like it did on the rocks. So this process you have to do every 3 years according to the manufacturer of this product. Some sealers, if you buy the really cheap ones, are maybe good for a year or so. And that's it. That's all you got to do. Just got to wait a couple of days before we can grout. I just wanted to share with you this little trick here. Whenever you get like little bits of globs of, Thinset mortar that poke through the mesh and come too far forward, I usually like to use a nail set because it's got a nice sharp pointed edge. And I just get in there and kind of clean it out, kind of like a dentist cleaning out the cavities there. So this is very useful for getting some of those little chunks out. And then when you're done, before you seal up the rocks, you get a vacuum cleaner and suck out all of this dust. And come by with a, right here I'm going to get a wet rag and bring it over here and get this little bit of cement off the front. So that's all you got to do, just scrub down your rocks really good. Alright, so we're going to be using this Navajo brown colored grout. And I never mix water, use water to mix the grout. I always use like a grout additive and a sealer. So this one here is made by the manufacturer to go with the grout, and I've already dumped 32 ounces of it in here. We're only going to mix half a batch. So this is a 25-pound bag. I'm only going to put in 12.5 pounds of product. Alright, so we have our grout ready to go. I've got my float. I usually use the small float on the wall because usually what we do is we're only grouting along the lines here, right? So we're going to be going kind of like this. And there's no reason to put grout all over the rest of the tile, like, on the floor. Sometimes people will just dump it out. On big tiles like this, I don't. I prefer to just work a little bit of it along the line so you don't have haze to clean up all over the place. It just makes cleanup a lot better. And in case it doesn't work well for us, which sometimes sanded grout is a real pain to get up the wall and to get it to go like this and stay without flaking and falling all over the place. We have this board down here which will capture all of it, and we'll scoop it up and put it back in the bucket. And in case this doesn't work, I may have to go old school on it here and put on the old rubber grouting gloves, and sometimes I find it easier to just do the backsplash with the grouting gloves on and just mash it in there and smooth it around with my hands, and I can feel better where the grout is going in. So let's give it a try. So you can see it's doing okay for us right now, but you can bet as the mix dries, it'll start to get a little harder to maintain this. But that's what we do. You just try to go in at a 45-degree angle. Sometimes I'll come straight down at first, right? And like this. And then what happens is once you want to get it off, you want to get all the excess off by scraping it at a real steep angle. See how it brings almost all of it off? That way you're not going to have to be sponging as much of the product off of there. And we're progressing along here, and I usually just do small sections at a time. Another trick I like to do too here is I'll wet the tiles down a little bit first, That'll make it less likely for the grout to stick and leave a lot of haze, but it also moistens the area right near the grout lines. So as the grout gets, as the grout gets a little bit drier, and I'm reaching down here and I'm gonna put some in here. It helps moisten it a little as I go to put it into the channels there. See that? And it makes it easier to wipe this off too with the sponge. Well, we've completed the initial grouting and wiping phase. It's been about 4 or 5 hours so far, and you can see there's a little bit of haze on the rocks there, and we have you can see some little bit excess haze right here in some of these areas. So what I'm going to do is I have a fresh new bucket of water here with a sponge, and I'm just going to hit the areas of the tile away from the grout lines. We'll probably get a little bit of water dribbling on it, but it's not really going to do anything. I'm not brushing up against it and dragging more grout off, or making more mud or anything out of it. I'm just only going to clean the surface of the tile. Well, you can see how much of a difference it made by sponging it off. If you see, the right side here looks nice and clean, whereas the left side and the rocks here still have the haze on it. So now that we're pretty much done with the larger tiles, we're now going to do just a quick light sponge down here on the rocks, because we need to bring the color back on these. There's way too much haze on haze that I don't think it'll come off very easily in the morning. So you can see I just have the sponge is just barely damp, and just trying to scrape off some of the haze there without disturbing the grout. And you can see it's not really affecting the sponge too much there. But I'll go to the other side here. See up here at the top, just to try to get the haze off of the rocks. Well, here we are the next morning. The grout is dried, and you can see that there really isn't much noticeable haze on the field tiles here. In fact, if I take my dry cloth here and just rub it just to see what's on there, really don't see anything coming off on there. So this idea of washing the tiles last night really paid off handsomely for us. Hardly any work to do. The only place that we really need to focus on is here on the river rocks here, because as you can see, there's still some little bit of streaks of grout on there, because you just can't keep washing it while it's still wet. You're just going to spread more mud around. So what I usually do is I come by the next morning with my dry terry cloth towel, or microfiber works pretty good too, and it will dig in and kind of clean up see how it cleans most of it off. And likewise, you find others on here too, and we're just going to go up and down the whole wall here. So here's one that looks like it's almost completely immersed, and we'll just give it a little scrub. And I got some of it up, but we'll come by later with a wet microfiber cloth that'll help cut through the rest of that. And here's another one here. You can see just a little bit of haze here on my hexagons, so I'm just going to give them a quick wipe with a wet rag. So it brings out their original color here very nicely. Alright, so I'm just going to show you how I start in the corner over here. I try to go all the way across whatever section I'm doing. And I'm just laying a thin bead. You don't want a whole lot. This area here might need a little bit more coverage here. But you just wanted to cover that basic area there. And we'll get a little more. And just take your thumb and tool it in. Try not to make it overly thick. And as soon as I finish the downside and the backside here, I'll immediately peel the tape off so that we don't let it dry, because it'll start curing pretty quickly on you. So here you can see how nice and straight the caulk line was going all the way up the corner. In fact, it just looks like a regular grout line. So the manufacturer here does a really good job matching their sanded grouts to their sanded caulk. And here you can see along the bottom of where the tile meets the tub, how it's just nice and perfectly straight.